What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Good Wolf Project. I'm your host, Jerry Scarlato, and today's conversation is with Anthony Whalen. Anthony is the CEO and founder of Pushup Chalk, which is exactly what it sounds like. Today, we talk about his journey starting and building Pushup Chalk. He started it last year. He is doing it while still having a full-time job, which is why this conversation is interesting, how he's juggling the full-time job and building a business at the same time, why he decided to start to build a business, delegating. We talk about how he's had to become a different person, things he's had to learn along the way. We talk about research and development, how many iterations he had to go through to figure out what he wanted to actually sell. So there's a number of things in this conversation that you have to listen to in order to pull out. It sounds like we're talking about business, but what we're talking about is what it takes to tinker with life. And we talk about that regularly, what it takes to figure things out along the way, because that's what this is all about. That's what exercise is about. That's what diet's about. That's what fitness is about. That's what mindset's about. That's what life is about. It's about figuring it out along the way. It's not one iteration of something. It is multiple iterations over time, again and again and again. So make sure you pay attention to the underlying message that's being said during this conversation, because it's not about what's being said, it's about what you can learn from what's being said. So enjoy this conversation with Anthony Whalen.
Yeah,
Anthony, good to see you, brother. How you doing today?
good man. How you been?
Yeah, doing well. We're
Good.
catching up after, well, we've really only met once, so we're catching
Mhm.
up from our first meeting. This is officially our second meeting. But so I learned something about you whenever we just jumped on here, that you are a time cop like I am. Um, One of the sayings that I like whenever I think about being on time, it's that success is on time. So why is time built into you? Why do you like being early to things?
Mm, Good question. I like being early mostly just because it makes me feel like I'm prepared then for when things actually kick off.
Yeah,
Like, if you get there 5 minutes late, you're already kind of behind and
yeah,
you're playing catch up. And, maybe it's I don't want to be, especially if I'm meeting with somebody, I don't want to be rude and be like, hey, can you go back and repeat everything you already said to
yeah.
everybody else just because I was late for whatever reason.
Hmm.
So part of it's just kind of respecting other people's time more than anything else. Um, but I think one of the funny challenges I have nowadays in my life is I have two little kids, and kids are never on time.
Right.
So trying to have that patience with them and find little moments. Maybe my oldest is 3.5, so he still doesn't have a concept of what a clock is.
Right.
But if I can try and explain to him in simple ways of like, hey, we try and be on time and get to places where we need to be. Um, maybe it's. I hope it's clicking. But for me, yeah, I think it really just comes down to respecting other people's time and I don't want to leave people waiting.
Yeah, no, I can definitely appreciate that. Another part of it, another part of it for me is, a lot of people say that they want to be able to work, like do as much as they can before they go to the thing, right? Whenever they're
Sure.
going to a meeting, like if you're going to a meeting in the same building or if you're going to a meeting somewhere else, they want to work until the point until they need to leave to go to the thing. But what happens when there's traffic on the way to the thing? What happens when your car doesn't start? What happens when there's a what am I trying to say? A garbage truck behind you whenever you're trying to pull out of your. That was one of our coaches one time. She said that there was a garbage truck sitting in front of my driveway. I couldn't get out. Um, but what happens when that happens and all you've done is plan for the allotment of time that it takes to travel to get there? Then you're behind, then you're stressed, and then that goes to the rest of the meeting, and that messes everything else up. So when it comes to traveling to things, I think it only makes sense to buffer in an extra 20 to 30% of time to be able to get there. But when it comes to actually being early to a meeting, even if it's just in another building, the meeting should start at the time that you're saying that the meeting starts. The meeting starts at 10, then the meeting starts at 10. So what do most people do? They get there at 10 and then they get their stuff ready,
Right.
right?
Right. Yep.
Instead of meeting starts at 10. So that means you get there 5 minutes early, get your stuff ready, and then you can talk to people once you kind of get there and get set, or you can finish up whatever you want to finish up. So I don't know. I think there's just different ways to think about it, and I think it would reduce a lot of people's anxiety if they just gave themselves a little bit of space on that.
No, you're totally right. And I mean, yeah, a little bit of buffer goes a long way. And the worst that can happen is you get there early, like, but that's fine, not a big
Mhm.
deal. And I don't remember. I had somebody during an internship in college. I don't know why I remember her telling me this as a boss, but she was always like, make sure. And not that I did anything to incite this, but she just kind of mentioned me, and she was trying to give me tips, during my internship. And she's like, when the workday starts at 8 or whatever, 8:30, she's like, doesn't mean you get here at 8:30 and then grab your coffee and then kind of, grab a pen from the supply cabinet, whatever. She's like, no, the work starts at 8:30, so you don't get here at 8:30.
Mhm.
And she's absolutely right, in my opinion. Yeah, she was absolutely right.
Definitely. Well, I'm sure that prioritizing time has been something that you've definitely paid attention to as of late. So let's get into your recent journey. Um, Pushup Chalk, your company,
Hmm.
is in a growth phase, if you will. Re- Very recently started, correct? Y'all had just started
Yeah,
that
yeah,
at like what, September of last year or something to that effect?
yeah. August 1st of last year of
Yeah.
2023, the website went live. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
so it was
very new.
literally we met at the Kroger Wellness Festival. That was, shoot, I don't remember. Was that in September or was that in August? I don't really remember.
Yeah, maybe, yeah, something very soon after I
Soon
started
after
the
that,
company.
and
Yeah.
we met, and you're talking about how you just launched the company. I'm like, oh, that's
Hmm.
crazy, because your logo was spot on, dude. I'm like, dude, this is awesome. Your packaging was good, like everything was spot on. So it's like, obviously, you had done a lot of work to just launch the biz. Not like things launch and
Right.
like all of a sudden everything came together and it was perfect. But I'm curious what prompted you to start the business. We didn't really get to dig into this whenever we met too much, but like, were you an entrepreneur before that? Did you have a corporate job before that? What did that look like? What prompted you to get this rolling?
Yeah, yeah. So I think it's tale as old as time for an entrepreneur in a lot of ways. I was dissatisfied with what was currently available, so I made my own, and I found out that some other people thought it was pretty cool too and pretty handy, and then we were off to the races. And I never really, this is my first company. I've done corporate jobs my entire career. Right out of college, I worked as a Big Four auditor, so very corporate, and worked in the beverage industry. Now I still have my day job working in the beverage industry. Um, so yeah, this adventure, and it took 18 months from when I like started making the first prototype to when I actually like turned on the website live to nobody even noticing, you know.
Right.
But
Right. You're like
yeah,
waiting
it's a
for
lot
all
of
this flood of sales to come in. It's like cricket, cricket. No, I'm just kidding.
right. Exactly. So yeah, I mean, there was a lot of buildup and a lot of tinkering, and I probably could have found ways to outsource some stuff, but I mean, I did everything. I built the website. My background's in accounting, so I do the books, and I source the stuff. I went through all the R&D, and my wife mentioned the logo. She was the one who did that one, so I'll let her know you like that. She's got some design
Well
background,
done.
so
Yeah,
that
that's
was
it's
all
great.
her. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's kind of how I approached everything throughout my career, and kind of the person I am. I like figuring new stuff out. Um, I like digging in and just tinkering, and so that bodes well for trying to start a small business, at least so far.
Well, it definitely does. And business, small business, medium business, big business is about tinkering, because once something stops working, you got to tinker with it to figure out how to make it work again, right? Turn the faucet back on.
Absolutely.
get the leads
Absolutely.
coming back in, get people buying your product again. So that's what it's about. So that's interesting. So you still have your job going on. So this is technically what is now called a side hustle, if you will.
Yeah.
You're like,
Yep.
yeah, this is
Yep.
not a side hustle at all. This is a full-time job on top of a full-time job.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's interesting. So having started it as something on the side, I'm curious, was it like, hey, this is something that I'm just going to do on the side. That's just the path that it's going to go. Is there like, did you have a plan for things moving forward, or is it just like, do I have you have a period of time where well, I'm going to try this for some period of time, and if it works out, great. If it doesn't work out, great. Or do you want it to work out and you want this to be your thing?
So overall, I do want it to work out. I do want it to be my thing. Um, in general, I'm trying to not put a ton of guardrails or time limits, and that's the good news. Like I still have my day job. Like this isn't what puts food on the table, which is nice in a way because I don't have to make sure I get a sales every day to feed my family. Um, so that's the fun part about it. It's also harder. There's a lot more to juggle on a day-to-day basis. But yeah, I mean, I would love for this to be a more consistent thing. And to this point, the thing I've liked the most, on top of just learning about what it takes to run your own business, is also just, I got into CrossFit like 3 years ago, and that's primarily been my market I've been attacking right now, just because I'm familiar with it. And there's a lot of chalk in gymnastics and powerlifting and climbing, and I'm going to get there. But for now, it's a great way for me to connect with more people in my community and just meet a bunch of good people, like cool people who are in the same stuff you're into. This has been fun for that too. So I don't know where it's going to end. As long as people keep digging the product and I keep getting feedback, I keep demanding feedback from people, good or bad, because I want to hear how to improve it. I want to hear what they like so I can expand upon it. And as long as that stuff keeps moving and I feel like I have some momentum, we'll keep doing it.
So I'm curious how that R&D process went. I can only imagine what that was like. The number of iterations that happened, the number of things, it falling apart. I can
Mm-hmm.
only imagine what it was. So first, explain the concept of the product is super cool, and then the name makes perfect sense once you know exactly what it is. But explain what the product is, and then I'm curious what that R&D process looks like, because that's like you said, like tinkering is the thing of entrepreneurship, and I believe
Yeah.
tinkering is also, to an extent, the thing of life. You got to be able to focus on the thing that you want, but at the same time, you have to know that you have to tweak it along the way. Fitness is a perfect example. You being a CrossFitter, you know this perfectly. Once you get to a plateau, you have to tinker. That's the change that you have to make to get through that plateau. So with R&D, when you're developing a product, you don't just, it's not one shot, right?
Right.
It's not like, oh,
If only, right?
bam, there it is. Got it. It's done.
Right.
It's done.
Yeah.
So that's why I think this is so important. And that's why I'm curious to know how that process went, because that's what stops so many people, because they expect it to just be the one shot. Just got to do
Right.
this one time and then it's done. So
Yeah.
what'd that look like?
Yeah, and I mean, for reference, so I mean, this is the tube. It's about the size of a traditional bar of soap or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's very simple. It's the cap off. You push the bottom
Mm-hmm.
like any sort of tube, and you
Mm-hmm.
get a block chalk in a tube.
Yeah.
So in essence, it's very simple.
Push-up
I mean,
chalk.
it's yeah. There you go. Uh, and honestly, I got the inspiration. I was putting deodorant on one day, and
Oh.
I was like, oh, imagine if this thing wasn't in this like container. It would kind of suck, right? It'd be like,
Mm-hmm.
so I was like, well, why can't you put? And now, of course, I'm thinking like, well, what else can we put in a tube? Put everything in a tube. But for this element, I mean, it started with I tried working on my own block chalk, which was a mistake because it's actually a lot more complicated. I found out than it is. So I ended up having to source that from a supplier and getting them to make the sizing I need and things like that. So I first tried like forming, shaping, dehydrating chalk, like existing gym chalk, which was a lot of
Complete
messy.
mess.
Yeah,
I can
chalk's
only
very
imagine.
messy,
Mm-hmm.
very
Complete
messy.
mess.
Yep, and still. very messy to this day. My wife's very patient with me. So there's always like a thin coat of chalk on like everything, it seems like.
Everything,
But
everywhere.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, through that process, I knew what I wanted in my mind. I knew kind of the level that it needed to be. So it was just a lot of back and forth. It's like, hey, all right, here's the latest version. Like, oh, this line isn't quite centered or it's not the right width. Do it again. And some stuff, unfortunately, you can't really test till it's in your hand and you
Hmm.
can see it. Um, and again, this is gonna continue to evolve, like you were talking about. I mean, tinkering and another word for that, just progress or evolving. I mean, you kind of, if you're not doing that stuff, then you're stagnant. So it really was a ton of trial and error. The good news is through my day job, I deal a lot with paperboard. So like a lot of the stuff any sort of like a 6 pack of beer you'd buy at the grocery store, that paperboard is a little different than corrugated. But like, having an idea of where those suppliers are and start looking from there. So that did help me, especially at the beginning, like figuring out, hey, you need a UP or like a barcode on here, right?
Code. Yeah.
Where do you get a barcode? So it's like I had some experience knowing like where to procure kind of the more the operational stuff.
Mhm.
So then it was just a lot of testing back and forth and seeing what works and continuing to improve it. Like I said,
Do you have any idea how many iterations it was before you hit go?
oh,
Any guesstimate?
probably probably 8 or 9
Yeah.
decent. I got another one like down here. Like there's like this doesn't even have any label on it,
Yeah.
right? This is just a
Yeah.
tube.
A tube. Yeah.
There's some other like, this one had a little writing on the top. I don't like it. Scrap it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was probably 8 or 9 before I was like, all right, this is this
Good
is a
place to
good place
start.
to start. Yeah.
There
Yep.
you go. Eight or
Yep.
nine.
Yep.
That sounds about right. Yeah, that's so important because like I said,
Mhm.
just so many people stop themselves. And that's a like I said, it's an analogy for life, like just for doing something in life, right? Because so many
Absolutely.
people stop themselves because they think it's just the one shot. Fitness is the example I always go back to, but nutrition is the same thing. Like if this diet doesn't work out, then I just need to stop. It's not meant to be for me.
Hmm.
It's there's just so many things in life that stop people from continuing to move forward and just change things over time. Like the
Yep.
thing that you're doing is not the thing you're going to be doing in a year. As long as you stay focused on what you're trying to go after and you keep it mostly the same, like, yeah, you have to keep yourself in a lane. Like you're not going to go from Push-Up Chalk is not going to go from like selling Push-Up Chalk to we're going to go to lotion now, but we're going to keep the name. Like that's not going to be the thing. So you have your guardrails to keep you there, but you also, like you said, you need to tinker because you'll veer off course a little bit, and then you'll have to tinker and you'll have to get yourself back on
Hmm.
course. So that's what that
Well,
8 or 9 iterations is.
yeah, absolutely. And I think as long as and back to your kind of point about just this perspective on life, it's about being always able to find the old silver lining in any situation. It's like, even if you can feel like something was a failure or approach it like a failure, but you probably learned something one way or another, right? So then you should never be afraid to try something new. So then it all kind of keeps cycling into itself of like, well, what's the downside of just trying something, right?
Mhm.
It's either going to work or you're going to learn something. So why not?
That's perfect. So my next question is, what's the obstacle that you ran into that you didn't expect to run into? There may be a number of them, but I'm sure in the
Yeah,
beginning it's like that there's going to be these things, right? When you start, you're like,
sure.
I have a general idea that there's going to be some obstacles, but I'm curious if you came across an obstacle, it's like I didn't see that one coming.
Yeah, what's a good one? Um, I think the biggest challenge, and I mean, I'm still learning about a lot of it, is just the whole world of e-commerce from just a promotional side and
Yeah,
commercialization side of things.
it's a beast.
Like what the hell are meta ads and how does this all work? And like, what's a really good way to interpret? There's tons of data. Um, and so I knew it was something I didn't know, so I knew I would have to learn it. But I think I might have underestimated a little bit the complexity and um, how easy it would be to digest and get a good feedback loop going on that stuff.
Mhm.
But really, one of the more unexpected things is more on a positive side of it in terms of like the amount of people that are like, this is amazing, I love it, like this is the coolest thing ever, this is, how did I not think of this? Like, those are the best compliments I can get. And so maybe it's a little bit of imposter syndrome or something. Like, it feels weird. I'm like, I made this thing, people are exchanging money for it, they're finding value in it and paying me for it, and they're really enjoying it, which is really cool. But it doesn't, it feels surreal sometimes
Yeah.
when I get messages like that, because I'm like, oh well, thank you, like that's
Yeah.
great, that's the best feedback. um so more of a positive surprise
Mm.
than anything else, so far.
Yeah.
And like,
Imposter. Go ahead.
mhm. I was gonna say, and like, I was getting I get messages from people in Greenland and Liechtenstein and like all over the world, like, hey, can I
That's
get
cool.
push-up chalk?
Yeah.
And I'm like, how did you find me? Like, it's that, those are the ones where I'm like, this is cool. And that's why, again, back to that momentum thing. I keep getting messages like that. I'm like, all right, well, there's something here.
Hmm. Imposter syndrome is a great. It's great that you say that because
Mhm.
so many people stop themselves from. I don't think that a lot of people maybe aspire to have a business, but even the belief that they have a story that's worth telling or something to that effect. Like, everyone is an individual. Everyone has some underlying story that someone else can learn from. Like, you are further along in something in life than somebody else, probably a large group of people. And so we don't believe in ourselves and we don't believe in our story because we just don't think that we're that special. So
Um,
I can completely appreciate, by the way, the feeling of, well, that's great. I'm glad you like it. But at the same time, like, in the back of your head, you're going, it doesn't feel like it's that big of a deal. Or, was that me who did that? What do you mean that was, yeah, no, that's great. That was me. Yeah, that was me.
yeah,
It's like this,
exactly.
this fight going on in your head on whether or not you accept the feedback, right? It's
Yep.
very interesting.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, like a lot of things in life, it's about balancing. Like, I think at a certain point, I think it's a good thing, right? You can stay a little more humble and be like, not too big for your shoes in terms of thinking like, it's something better than it actually is.
Mm,
But on the flip side, you have to be able to hear that stuff and have a little confidence trying
mhm.
new stuff and getting into things. So yeah, I try and keep a good balance on that stuff.
So here's a little deeper question. Who
Sure.
What did you realize about yourself? Or what have you realized about yourself on this journey? Since you started this business, is there anything about yourself that you've realized that has been a limitation? Because one thing that is true in business is that the owner is always the limiting factor. The owner
Absolutely.
is always the limiting factor. So I don't ask that in a judgmental way. I ask that in a, I know in my business that I had for 10 years, I was the limiting factor. I fully realize that, especially now that it's not around, that it's somewhere else. But it's so I'm curious if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah. Well, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, there's always a bottleneck, and it's usually the person in charge. It's kind of just, for some reason, that's how it goes, especially in a small environment. Um, and I think at this point in the life cycle of the business, I think there's probably some things that I should be delegating and outsourcing to other people. I think I'm apprehensive more about, I'm not quite sure what I need, and maybe that's just my excuse for not doing it,
Mm,
probably.
could be.
But yeah, I think that's really it. Like a lot of the marketing stuff, a lot of the social media stuff would probably be one of the first things that I would hand off to somebody else, because again, it's just, I'm way more of a numbers guy and an operator type person than a commercial person. So that would be probably one of the first things I could do, and I'm sure somebody could do better than I am on that stuff. But I guess I need to spend the time figuring out what exactly I need and or what I believe I need, and then let somebody do their job. and and start running things like that. So, but yeah, it's a good question. I might hit you back after this if I think of something else.
Yeah, well,
It's
if I
something I need
talk
to
long
mull
enough,
over.
I was going to say if I talk long enough, maybe you'll figure something, you'll
Yeah,
find something else out. But
yeah,
delegating is definitely a big thing for an entrepreneur,
sure.
especially. It's a big thing for anybody in general.
Hmm.
So I think of things in four categories: do, decide, delegate, and delete. Things that you do are things you need to do within, if they take 5 minutes or less, go ahead and do them, get them done. Decide are things that are very important, but you need to decide on when to do them because otherwise everything else will fill the gap. Those are things like exercise or projects that you're trying to work on. You need to put them on the schedule, decide when to do them. Delete are things that are useless and you just need to delete them. That's like scrolling on social media. And then delegate it's a tough one for people because
Sure.
it's two things. Number one, for entrepreneurs, it is I don't know that they can do it as well as I can. Although in this instance, it sounds like you understand that maybe someone else can do it better than you. So there's something else going on there. But for a lot of entrepreneurs, it is I don't know if they can do it as well as I can, or I'm concerned that they're not going to do it as well as I can. In that case, for me, because I ran up against that barrier for me a number of times, the thing that helped me with that was understanding that they're just not going to do it the way that I do it, not necessarily as
Exactly.
well as I do it. It's a different way of thinking about it. It probably will end up better. It's just not going to be the way that I would do it. Right.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. Well, an interesting thing too is I think I do like again to my day job now. I oversee a whole department, so I have a bunch of different people in our group, and I do a lot of delegating. Like there's fantastic people on the team, and they're doing exactly what you just said. Probably not the way I would do it, but are we getting the outcome we need? Beautiful, great. Let's move on. Um, and I guess maybe it's probably just something in around the fact that like, well, the push-up chalk's all on me, so then I'm probably a little more apprehensive because there's maybe more risk involved. I guess it's my name on the table at a
Mm,
certain point,
mm,
which is something I need to work through and just
mm,
get comfortable with because that's never going to go away,
mm.
right? Uh, but you're absolutely right. I mean, those four things are things I would I'm going to put a sticky note right here on the bottom of my monitor, just like no brainers. Yeah,
Mm.
every time something comes up, one of those four.
No, but that delegate thing definitely is tough for people. I think the other thing that stops people from delegating is why should I have someone else do it when I can do it? It's more of like a um, how do I say, like they're protecting their ego almost. I'm not saying that this is what's going on with you, but it's like, why should I ask somebody else to do it for me when I can just do it myself? You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
So, that's just another, when it comes to business, the more of you there are, as long as it's productive, like you said, you work in a team,
Mm-hmm.
so you totally understand that. The more of
Mm-hmm.
you there are, the more things you can get done.
Exactly.
So while you could potentially do all the things if you want to, your time is limited.
Yep.
So you have to delegating is a necessity. And I'm not like throwing this at you. I'm just saying this out loud because I think so many people could free up their time and give themselves more time to do things that they enjoy if they just learn how to delegate some things.
100%. Yeah, and really, like it's one of the greatest ways to create buy-in on a team and have people generate ownership. Like if I go to somebody and I go, hey, um, you know, our cost on transportation's up a little bit, hypothetically. I don't know. Um, how would you how would you approach looking into that? And what do you think? How do you think we could assess ways to do that better? And they're like, well, I'll take a look at some data and we'll see. And then, I mean, you got to be patient with that process usually. And that's why I think a lot of people don't do it is because the speed of it takes longer up front because there's a learning exercise. It's a feedback loop you got to do with somebody, especially if they're new or something and aren't familiar with a lot of the business or something like that. But it's always worth it in the long run, always, to take the time and show them why you're doing something and give them a chance to take a swing at it. And something I do, especially with new people, is there's a lot of things we want to try and get done fast. So even if I have to take care of the real version, we'll call it, I'll say, hey, I got asked this. How would you have done it? Just so then they get a rep in, even though it's not the one going up the ladder as an output or deliverable or whatever, but someone's getting a rep and like taking a swing at it. And the cool part is when you get something from somebody else and you're like, I didn't even think of that. That's a good idea. And that will happen more times than you think. So it's gonna suck when you start, but you'll figure out ways too to, I feel like, get better at setting people up for success when you
Mm,
are delegating too.
that's good. No, I
Yeah.
like that. That's a good one. Um, all right, brother. I think so. What I had another question just popped into my head, but it just escaped me. What's the future look like? What's the
Mm.
future look like? The immediate future. What's the next 12 months look like?
12 months, especially just for Push-Up Chalk,
Hmm.
my goal for the business is this is not it's not another shirt or a shoe. It's different enough where you got to kind of be like, wait a minute, what is that? And you got to kind of see it. But once it clicks for people, you're like, oh, it's like the ice cream push pop thing. You remember.
Hmm.
Once it clicks for people, they're in usually. So this year for Push-Up Chalk is a lot of just about education and getting it into people's hands.
Hmm.
Like just and the cool part is 99 out of 100 times, let's say you walked into a gym and reached in a chalk bucket and you're like, this is the greatest chalk of all time. You wouldn't know what kind it is, but it's just a white block. So, having a brand helps with that as well.
Hmm.
So getting the name out there for Push Up Chalk. Um, Personal life, I'm just trying to, you know, keep all the balls in the air, man. I mean, like I said, I got the
Get
day
that.
job. We got this. I got two little kids. Obviously, got the wife, got the house. Doing yard work for 3 hours the other day.
Hmm.
It's everything. But I like it. I like staying busy. Um, so it's one day at a time, but we keep doing the right things for the right reasons every single day. And I said it before, but you really start to feel that momentum, and I believe that.
Yep, no doubt. That's what it's about. Gain
Yeah,
traction, keep traction,
that's right.
gain
That's
it
right.
and keep it. That's the goal.
Yeah.
Anthony, appreciate you so much, brother. Where do people find you and find more about Push Up Chalk?
Pushupchalk.com. Very simple. That's the best place to find us, and pretty heavy on Instagram at pushupchalk. You'll see me on a lot of the social media stuff. So feel free to comment, send a message anytime, and yeah, get any feedback you have on the product. I'm all ears.
Sounds good, brother. Anthony, thanks so much, man. Appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks, Jerry. Talk soon, man.